Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to play Last Outpost. Roll and write I've been working on for a while. It is a 1 to 6 player simultaneous play roll and write that has some polyomino placement, has tech tree advancement mechanisms, and it has some resource management. All of the players share the 5 dice, so you only need 5d6 to play the game. Each player will need one of these colony board sheets, and you can print multiple of these structure reference sheets if you want. They're just provided in a file with the dice pool sheet. But the main thing that everyone needs is one of these. At the start of each round, you're going to roll the 5d6, and you're going to, starting with position 1, place the physically closest dice onto each position. So for position 2, I think that's closest probably. Position 3, this is closest. Position 4, and then position 5. Now at the start of the game, all the players only have access to 2 dice. So that would be the dice in position 1 and then position 2. Over the course of the game, you might get additional dice. Usually it's for sure that you'll get at least 1 extra as your colony grows, in which case you then have access to the dice in position 3, and so on. Every time you get additional dice, you check off one of these dice on this dice track. Now, down here is a round tracker where you can keep track of which round you're on. And this first round, we would move right into the action phase. So on the action phase, during this phase, you have 2 dice that you have access to. And you can choose to either try to build a structure, you can put them into storage, or you can load them into cargo shuttles. So let's talk first about building structures. Anytime you build a structure, you're going to be building it on this colony map over here. So all the structures are different polyomino shapes, and with the exception of the power plant, which is a string of circles. And you're going to be placing them on this colony map over here. Now on this colony map, a lot of the squares are empty, which means you can build on them no problem. Some of them have these little mountain icons. These mountains require bulldozers from down here in order to build on them. If you don't have a bulldozer, you still can do it, but it costs negative morale. So that's not great. Negative morale every time you check it off is negative 3 points, up to negative 6 points. So you don't necessarily want to use that if you don't have to. Another thing you'll find on the colony map are power crystals. Power crystals, when you surround them, so if you have structures in each square around the crystal, not including diagonals or orthogonally, you get to build a crystal mine or claim that power crystal, which allows you to check one of these power crystals off over here. That gives you the ability to adjust your dice rolls, unlock new shuttles, or if you spend 2 of your power crystals, you can gain an extra die. Additionally, at the end of the game, the more power crystals you've claimed, the more victory points you have. The last thing you'll find on the map is you'll sometimes find these little power icons. These are, thematically speaking, these are geothermal vents. So when you build on these, instead of spending power from your power track, you get to get a free power instead. So as you can see, we've rolled a 6 and a 2 this round, and those are the 2 dice we have access to. So if I'm going to build a structure, let's build an example structure. Each structure has, on this reference sheet, you'll see it has its name, of course. It has the shape that you can build it in. The shape can be rotated or flipped however you want. And then you have the cost. So each structure, when you build it, has a dice cost. Power plant requires 2 equal dice. Shelter requires 2 odd dice. Agrodome requires 2 even dice. The launch bay requires a 5 and a 6. And then the data archive, you're picking a die that matches the achievement you're claiming. We'll deal with that later. And then once you've built that structure, you're going to be gaining a benefit from it. Power plant surprisingly gives you power. The shelter lets you check off a shelter on your shelter track. The food lets you check off a food in your food track. And the launch bay lets you unlock a shuttle. And data archive lets you claim an achievement. In this case, we have a 6 and a 2. That's 2 even dice. So that's going to let us build an agrodome. Now, when we're building that structure, we're going to look over here and we're going to try to surround as many power crystals as we can, or at least start working towards that. So I'm going to build this agrodome right here. Boop. And then I'm going to write down, so agrodome costs 2 even dice, a worker, and a power. At the start of the game, everyone starts with 3 power and 3 colonists. So that is a-okay. We've got lots to start with. So I then write down the cost in the structure. So I'm spending a 6 there, my 6 from over there, and the 2. And then I'm going to spend a colonist. I like to draw them as little tiny ice cream cones. And then I also have to spend a power, which looks exactly like a lightning bolt, as you can see. Then, to show that I've spent those 2 resources, my colonist and my power, and I mean, to be fair, the guy's just working in there. He's not dead or anything. We then cross him off here, and then we get the benefit. So for the agrodome gives us a food. So we get to draw in this teeny loaf of bread. I like kind of scratching stuff in. Other people like circling it. So it's up to you how you want to do it. If you want to circle it, that is okay too. So I built that. I've used my 2 dice that I have available to me. An alternative to building a structure. So I used my dice to build a structure. I could have instead chosen to load that dice into a cargo shuttle. When you load a dice into a cargo shuttle, you write down the value in starting at the bottom of the shuttle and going up. Now it's important to note that the dice, once loaded, can only have a dice that's equal to or less than loaded above it. So a 6 is a great dice to start at the bottom, but if I had started, let's say, at the bottom with a 2, then I would not be able to put anything higher than a 2 or a 1 above that 2. So usually not a good idea. Better to do like a 6 or a 5 or something like that. Another option I could have chosen to do is I could have loaded the dice values into storage, where I just write the dice value in. You're not allowed to use it this round, but next round you'd be able to use it. And by storing it, I'd also gain access to a bulldozer, which we talked about earlier as allowing you to build on these difficult terrain squares. In this case, I didn't do either of those things. I just built it. I built a structure instead. So for now, that's the end of the round. I didn't choose to do those. That's okay. So once we finish the dice action round, I've checked that off. We move everyone. If you're playing with multiple people, you'll want to stop, make sure everyone has a chance to finish their action phase. And then you move on to the colonist phase, where we gain colonists. So at this point, we go and look at our food production. So in this case, I've got 2. And we gain 2 colonists, or 1 colonist per food production. So we're looking at 1, 2. Now, when we gain colonists that have a square over it like this is a free dice value that you've unlocked. So similar to the 6 or the 2, when you unlock this, you'd be able to choose any dice of your choice. So you'd be able to say that you have another 3 or another 6 or whatever. And you'd be able to either put it in storage, put it into cargo. You could build a structure with it if you had another dice in storage. So if I had a 6 in here and I got another free dice, I could say it was another 6 and I could build a power plant. But if you don't have that extra dice in storage, then you can either put it in storage or into a shuttle. Once your colonists have grown past this first section, you'll start to need shelters. So for each section on the colonist track, you'll see that it slowly grows in its shelter requirement. And this is thematically fairly straightforward. The more people you have, the more beds you need. In order to build shelters, it's a square structure. It requires 2 odd dice, a worker, or a colonist, and a power. But there are a couple alternative ways to get access to additional shelters as well. Now, if on the next turn I get 2 more colonists and I don't have that extra shelter, I can choose one of 2 things. Either my colonists, I don't gain this extra colonist here, or I take a negative morale and gain the colonists despite not having the structure requirement. They're not happy because you're squishing them into a smaller and smaller space, but it would at least let you still get more colonists, which is helpful. All right, so we've gained those 2 colonists, and that's the end of the round. So now we're on to round 2. Now, we have more colonists now, so that's helpful. Oh, I better roll these. Boop. I think the 3, 5, and then the 6, 2, and then this 2 is way over there. So we have a 3 and a 5. That's handy. That's 2 odd dice, so that would allow us to build that shelter we were talking about. Now, let's talk about some other ways that you can unlock things, though. So now we have 4 available colonists. So one area that you can use, additional area you can use colonists in, other than structures, is by filling cryopods. So thematically, you're packing these people into these cryopods to escape on the capital ship. So that's good for them. I mean, you're removing them from here and you're stuffing them into these spots, presumably for a very long time, but they get to escape the upcoming apocalypse. So in order to put workers into cryopods, similar to how you were cross them off for building a structure, you cross off 1 worker per cryopod you're planning on filling. 1, 2, 3. And then once you've completed that set of cryopods, you then get to put a check mark on one of the benefits below. So any of these benefits below the cryopods are unlocked. So I could choose to gain another shelter and without having to actually build the structure, get another food without having to build an agrodome. You'll see this getting an extra dice option here requires 2 sets of cryopods to unlock it, so I could start working towards that. Some of them give you double bonuses, so 2 power or 2 bulldozers. And over here you can also get points from them if you unlock multiple sets of cryopods and allocate them to points. In this case, I have the dice I need to build a shelter, so rather than claiming that free shelter, I might start working towards a free dice, an extra dice each round. So that's how you use your colonists to fill cryopods. Now, you can also use your dice. Let's talk about the shuttles and the tech tree. So let's say rather than rolling a 3 and a 5, I had rolled a 6 and a 2. So I couldn't build that shelter that I was thinking about. Instead, what I could choose to do is I could work on loading dice into my shuttle here. So I could, let's say I've loaded a 6 in on a previous round. I have another 6, and then I'll put a 2 in there. That's fine. I can fit a 4th die into this shuttle, but only if I pay 1 power to do it. So because it's heavier, it's requiring another energy. I'm not going to do that this time. When it's ready to launch, you can launch it at any time during the round. You can check off this down here to show that you're launching it. And then you are taking the dice values from the shuttle and you're assigning it to the tech tracks up here. So all the tech tracks start at the bottom and then go up. Some of them have interconnecting spots where you can transition from one column to another. You will see here on these bottom 2 rows, they all require any die will work for any of these. And then higher up, it'll require specific dice. And sometimes right at the top here, it requires multiple dice. In this case, we're starting at the bottom, so I can assign the dice pretty much however I want. Like we were talking about before, I need that shelter, so maybe I'd choose to start on this side. So I would say, okay, I'm going to spend a 2 here to gain a power. I don't really need it, but that's okay. And then I'd spend this 6 here to gain a shelter. So now we're good for our colony or our colonists phase here. And then we've got one more 6. We'll go ahead and assign it here to gain an additional 2 power. So now we got power for days. That's all right. So these different tech tree items, these ship components, they're called, are all worth a certain amount of points when they're unlocked. This bottom row is worth 0 points. Next row up, 1 victory point each. Next one up is 1 victory point each as well. This row, 2 victory points each. And then the top row is worth 0 in itself, so you don't just get a victory points for unlocking these. However, they do have victory point conditions that apply to other aspects of the game. So for instance, this one provides 2 victory points per agrodome you built. Or this one gives you 2 victory points for every launch shuttle you have. This one gives you 2 victory points for every cryopod set that you've filled. This one gives you 2 victory points per power crystal. So once you, although they're harder to get, and they're not specifically worth anything by themselves, in combination with the rest of your game, they can be quite valuable. Once that shuttle has been fully launched, you've marked all those off, so that's good. You can also add up the value of the shuttle. So depending on the total value of what's been loaded into the shuttle, you'll get victory points as well. So 6, 12, 14. Not quite enough for that 2 victory points. So in the game, maybe I should have spent that extra power and load another dice, but that's okay. In this case, we get the 1 victory point from that. So that's something to keep in mind. The more you load them up, the more victory points they're worth. Where it gets a little tricky is you're going to need those specific dice up here. So it's not, while it can be tempting to load just 6s on your other shuttle, that's actually not going to get you as many points as if you had balanced it correctly and planned ahead. Additionally, it's important to note that at the start of the game, you only have access to 2 shuttles, these 2 right here. The other 3 shuttles are locked. In order to unlock those, you need one of these unlock symbols. You can get that from cryopods, you can get that from the tech tree, or eventually once you have enough colonists, you'll unlock one for free down here. So that's how I used my 2 and 6 that I shamefully rearranged into the numbers that will work best for me for this tutorial. So that would be the end of my second action phase, and we'd move on to the colonist phase again. I have 2 food production, so I get 2 colonists. I just got that free die value, and I've moved into here, but we've got 1 shelter, so we're okay. And I do get 1 free dice value. I could load it into the shuttle, or I could put it into storage. Bulldozers are a good thing to have for when you're working on these difficult terrain. So I'm going to say I have a 6 and fill 1 of my bulldozers. I can later move that 6 over into a shuttle. So at the end of the game, actually no, with the colonist track, for each section, at the end of it, some of the sections give you a bonus. So once I have colonists up to here, I'm going to gain access to an additional die. Once my colonists grow into this box, I'm going to be required to have 2 shelters and so on. That requirement will keep growing. But I will also start to consume the food that I'm producing. So once I pass here, this icon here means that I have to scratch off one of my food. That means moving forward after that, I will only gain 1 colonist unless I increase my food production. So it is possible for your population to tableau if you don't continue to add agrodomes or gain food via other methods. So let's talk about achievements. So at the top of your board here, you've got 6 different achievements that are possible. There are, if you have claimed 4 power crystals. So again, power crystals are claimed if you've surrounded them orthogonally. So let's say I had a power station here. Note when you build on a power crystal, it's toast. You can't claim it after that. But then that lets you claim that once it's, because I've got it surrounded on all 4 sides. Yeah, you'd get to claim whichever of these you want. These let you increase or decrease the value of a die when you're writing it down. You don't change the die itself because everyone's referencing the same dice. Excuse me. And they're also victory power crystals are worth a significant amount of victory points at the end of the game. Thematically speaking, these are the power crystals you're using to power your capital ship. So that's why it's valuable for your colony to collect them. So this first achievement gives you can claim this if you've got 4 power crystals claimed. This achievement you can claim if you've have 5 food production. Whether it's consumed or not doesn't matter. This achievement you can claim once you've checked off 15 of these different ship components, these different tech tree items. This one you can claim once you've filled 4 different cryopod sets. This one you can claim once you've launched 4 different shuttles. And this one you can claim once you have 5 shelters. And in order to claim one of these achievements, you have to spend a die matching it. So first you have to actually have achieved it. Like you can't claim, oh, I will have 4 power crystals in the future. No, you actually have to have those 4 power crystals claimed. And then you have to spend a die that matches the number. So if I was claiming those 4 power crystals or that achievement for it, I wouldn't be able to with the dice I have here currently. If I had, let's say instead I was claiming this shelter achievement, I could do that using my 6, and I could build, say, let's say I built it here and spend a colonist to do it. I'd be able to check that off, and then I would note down on which round I claimed it on. It's basically impossible to claim this on round 2, but that's just my example. Now, if you claim the achievement at the end of the game, when you guys are comparing your score, if you claim the achievement before everyone else did, then you get 5 victory points. If you claim the achievement on the round that somebody else did, you still get 5 victory points. But if you claim the achievement after other people have claimed it, so if somebody claimed it earlier than you did, then it's only worth 2 victory points. So you're going to go through 8 rounds. When you get to round 5 and round 7, you'll notice that there's these. These are tectonic movements. When you get to those, you're going to roll the die, compare it to this tectonic movement track. These shapes are similar to structures, and then you can rotate them or flip them how you want. When you're placing them, you have to ensure that one of the squares on the tectonic movement is over top of a power crystal. So let's say I could put it here. And then you scribble in the shape. This is basically a earthquake event, and it leaves big tears on the surface. So you can't build on these anymore. And that power crystal that you covered up is toast. So you want to be very careful where you're putting that, because that will block where you're building. So that happens 2 times. That happens once on round 5, once on round 7. Now, let's fast forward. End of the game. You've made it to the end. You're going to count up score from a couple different areas. You're going to count up your score from your achievements. So again, if you were the first or if you were tied for first to claim an achievement, it's worth 5 victory points. If you were after somebody else in claiming achievement, it's worth 2. So in this case, in this scenario that I played earlier, I got 5 victory points. you go and you count your points from your economy. So in this case, in this game, I had enough food for 5 victory points and enough shelters for 5 victory points. However, at one point I had taken negative morale, so that was only 7 victory points total for that. I did pretty well with my colonists, so I gained 15 victory points for my colonist. Then you count up how many points you got from your cryopods. This only happens if you use sets of cryopods to gain points on this section. So in this case, I got 5. I had claimed 3 power crystals, which is worth 8 victory points. Then on my tech trees, I'd gained, these tech trees don't really matter. They're not worth any victory points, but I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this row, so I got 6 points. I had 3 in this row, so I got 3 points. I had 2 in this row, so I got 4 points. And then I had these 2 high-level ones. This one gave me 2 victory points per agrodome. I only had 2, so that wasn't fantastic. And then I got 2 victory points per set of cryopods filled, which was better. So a total of 14 from that. And then for my shuttles, when I launched them, I got an additional 6 points. And when I added all of those up, I got 73. 73 total, which isn't bad. I've seen better. I think 100 points is a really good game. And 50 points would be a bad game. So this was right in the middle of the road. But that's how to play Last Outpost. It's simultaneous, so everyone is using the dice and using their sheets at the same time. Just check in with each other every once in a while to make sure you're on the same round and finish up the action phase together before you move on to your colonist phase. I would love to hear what you thought of the game, and if you had any questions, please let me know. And thanks for supporting Last Outpost.